Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 9 p.m. English News Edition. Here are the top stories. The Republic of Djibouti is modernizing without abandoning its foundation, reform for balance and accountability. And for the international news, the level of destruction in Gaza is equivalent to 13 pyramids and the cost of reconstruction exceeds 17 billion USD. The details now, as I mentioned the title, are pursuant to the provision of Article 91 of the Constitution of Djibouti. The National Assembly held an official plenary session on the morning of Sunday, October 26, 2025, under the chairmanship of the President of the National Assembly, His Excellency Dilaita Mohamed Dilaita, in the presence of the Prime Minister, His Excellency Mr. Abdulqadir Kamil Mohammed, members of the government and all MPs of the 90th legislative term. This session, marked by its institutional significance, was entirely devoted to the examination and adoption of Bill number 1/25, 90th legislation concerning the partial amelioration of the Constitution. In his opening remarks, the Speaker of the National Assembly welcomed members of the government and Parliament and invited the Assembly to observe a minute of silence and recite Al-Fatiha in memory of the late Brigadier Hassan Roble Ali, one of the country's most distinguished parliamentary figures. Following this, the Committee on Legislation, General Administration and Human Rights, in coordination with the Committee on Social Development and Environmental Protection, presented its detailed report on the proposed constitutional amelioration. The main amendments included in the draft revision as follows: inclusion of the fight against female genital mutilation with the constitutional framework, a stricter eligibility requirement for presidential candidates, expansion and strengthening of the Constitutional Council, including an increase in its membership and the extension of members' mandates, modernizing of the state's financial and budgetary system, other institutional and organizational adjustment. During the discussion, Mr. Abdurrahman Awali Yassin, head of the Parliament Group of the People's Rally for Progress, RPP, expressed his satisfaction with the spirit of responsibility, dialogue, and Republican consensus that characterized the review process. In turn, Mrs. Kaltoum Farah Saeed, chair of the Committee on Legislation, General Administration and Human Rights, delivered an extensive legal presentation outlining the constitutional and procedural framework guiding the process. The Prime Minister extended his congratulations to the President of the National Assembly, Honorable Dilaita Mohamed Dilaita, to all the MPs, commending their embodiment of national duty and contribution to making the Parliament the beating heart of Djiboutian democracy. At the close of deliberation, the National Assembly adopted by a qualified majority Bill number 001/25 on the partial amelioration revision. The amelioration of the Constitution, thereby reaffirming the sovereign will of the legislative institution to align the Republic's fundamental law with the nation's political, economic, and social development. The statement emphasized that this high-level legislative action reaffirms the constitutional role of the National Assembly as the guardian of democratic legitimacy. Before concluding the session, the President of the National Assembly expressed his gratitude to the Prime Minister, Mr. Abdulqadir Kamil Mohammed, and the Ministry of Economy, Finance and Industry, Mr. Ilyas Musa Dawali, for their active cooperation and participation in the work of the Coordination Committee. And now, in his opening address, the President of the National Assembly, Mr. Dilaita Mohamed Dilaita, extended a warm welcome to the members of the government and the MPs present. Let's listen to his words.
Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés,
ladies and gentlemen, members of the government, distinguished guests, on this solemn day, pursuant to Article 91 of our Constitution, the entire nation is watching us gathered here in this august chamber for a mission of institutional and historic significance, the examination and vote on Bill number 001 and 25/9L on the partial revision of the Constitution of the Republic of Djibouti. First of all, allow me to extend on behalf of the member of the 9th Legislature my Republican greetings to His Excellency Abdulqadir Kamil Mohammed, Prime Minister, as well as to all members of the government present with us today. I also invite you, dear colleagues, to observe a moment of silence and prayers in memory of the late Dean Hassan Roble Ali, an eminent parliamentary and a leading figure in a national political life whose commitment and patriotism will continue to inspire our work. May the Almighty receive his soul in his infinite mercy. Honorable Member of Parliament, the session opening today marks a major step in the consolidation of our institutional edifice. The constitutional amendment we are about to examine aims to adapt our basic law to the contemporary realities of our country, strengthen the rule of law, and modernize our institution to better meet the deep aspirations of the Djiboutian people. This reform, the result of a long consultation process, notably introduced the inclusion of the fight against female genital mutilation in our Supreme Charter, reaffirming our commitment to the dignity and fundamental rights of Djiboutian women, the strengthening of eligibility criteria and powers related to the highest offices of state, the modernization of the national budget law to consolidate transparency and good public governance. Distinguished colleagues, this approach is part of a dynamic of Republican responsibility, dialogue, and consensus values of that underpin the strength and stability of our democracy. I hope that our discussions will live up to the historic significance of this day. In a spirit of mutual understanding, respect, and patriotism, together we have a duty to maintain the balance between the continuity of the state and the modernizations of our institution while respecting our republican values and national unity. I therefore declare open the plenary session of the National Assembly of the Republic of Djibouti devoted to the partial revision of our constitution.
And now, during this session, the head of the parliamentary group of the People's Rally for Progress, Honorable Abdurrahman Awali Yassin, delivered a thoughtful address in which he underscored the vital importance of national unity and dialogue among the various political forces.
It is with a deep sense of Republican responsibility and national pride that I speak on behalf of the parliamentary group of Popular Rally for Progress on the occasion of this historic session dedicated to the partial revision of our constitution. The text we have just examined and adopted marks an important turning point in the political and institutional life of our nation. It embodies our shared desire to strengthen the rule of law, deepen democracy, and adapt our institution to a demand of a constantly changing world. We welcome the inclusive and concerted approach that prevailed throughout the process. A dialogue and mutual listening and Republican consciousness guide our work. This climate of serenity and mutual respect reflect the political maturity in our assembly, but also the high sense of duty of each member of Parliament. This text, ladies and gentlemen, faithfully express the deep aspiration of Djiboutian people to consolidate our constitution, to ensure the continuity of the state, and to strengthen the political, economic, and social stability of our country. The RPP parliamentary group welcomes this reform adopted in a spirit of national unity and Republican responsibility. We thank the President of the National Assembly for his enlightened leadership, as well as the government for its attentiveness and availability throughout the process. It is a great honor for me as Chair of Committee on Law, General Administration and Human Rights to present to the National Assembly the conclusion of our committee's joint report prepared in coordination with the Committee on Social Development and Environmental Protection. The draft constitutional amendment we have examined stems from a clear desire to adapt our basic law to the change in our society while preserving the founding principles of our republic. Our work conducted with the rigor and transparency has enabled us to analyze each provision in a spirit of responsibility and openness. We have ensured that these reforms consolidate democratic achievement, strengthen institutional cohesion, and guarantee the stability of our legal framework. The main innovation introduced by this revision concern the inclusion of the fight against female genital mutilation in the Constitution and a strong act in favor of human rights and dignity of Djiboutian women. The modernization of national budgetary framework to ensure better governance and greater transparency of the public finance. By adopting this bill, you confirm our Assembly's vocation to remain the vigilant guardian of a democratic legitimacy and institutional progress. I therefore invite you with a conviction and pride to support this revision.
And now for his part, His Excellency Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed, speaking on behalf of the government, expressed his full support for this parliamentary initiative.
Honorable representant.
Honorable members of the people, the draft law is a proposal from Parliament to amend certain articles of the Constitution in line with the will of the Djiboutian people. I would like to first congratulate the Speaker of the National Assembly for his initiative, carried out with the approval of all MPs to concretely translate the popular will of the Djiboutian people into action. I hope that the honorable representative of the people will actively support this proposal. This law marks an important step forward in strengthening our democracy and ensuring the voices of all citizens are heard. It reflects our collective commitment to the principle of justice, unity, and progress. Thank you.
And now, at the conclusion of the deliberation, the National Assembly approved by a qualified majority Bill number 1, year 25, 90th legislation relating to the partial amelioration of the Constitution. This decisive vote reflects the sovereign will of the legislative institution to align the Republic's fundamental law with the nation's political, economic, and social development. The official statement emphasized that this high-level legislative act reaffirms the constitutional role of the National Assembly as the guardian of democratic and legitimacy, and is a vital force in the ongoing consolidation of the state's institutional framework. Before adjourning the session, the President of the National Assembly, Mr. Dilete Mohamed Dilete, expressed his heartfelt appreciation to the Prime Minister, Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed. The Speaker then formally declared the official closure of the plenary session dedicated to the partial amelioration of the Constitution of the Republic of Djibouti, marking the successful conclusion of a major parliamentary achievement.
Monsieur le député, merci beaucoup de votre invitation. La loi 01 AN 25, 9e législature a été votée à l'unanimité de voix.
And now the national television crew captured on camera the thoughts and impressions of one of the deputies, Mr. Mahmoud Mustafa, as he shared this reflection on the ongoing parliamentary sessions. He highlighted the key development, expressed his views on the importance of the legislative discussions, and commended on the collaborative spirit and dedication displayed by his colleagues during the debates and votes. And still we captured on camera the impressions, reflection, and observation of parliamentarian Ugure Kifle Ahmed. As he shared his thoughts on the ongoing parliamentary sessions, he spoke at length about the key debates and legislative initiatives, emphasizing the importance of national unity, transparency, and collaboration among deputies. Parliamentary Ugure Kifle also highlighted the significance of the recent decisions of the country's political, economic, and social development. He praised the spirit of dialogue and compromise demonstrated by his colleagues and expressed his hope that this effort will result in meaningful reforms and tangible benefits for the public. And we also continue capturing by the in-person of Safia Elmi Jibril, who the impression, reflection, and insight of several other deputies as Safia Elmi Jibril, who shared her perspective on ongoing parliamentary session. She spoke about key debates, legislative initiative, and important decision, especially the MJF decision on the constitutional law being discussed, highlighting the significance of this measure for the country's political, social, and economic development. Also, Salaban Dahir and Mr. Omar emphasized the value of collaboration, dialogue, and constructive engagement among colleagues, and they expressed hope that the outcomes of this session will strengthen democratic institutions, promote transparency. Mr. Omar also mentioned his observations provided a comprehensive view of the parliamentary process, illustrating the commitment of elected representatives to their duties and the broader goals of national progress. And now, grand format of tonight, and now we turn to this report on Djibouti's effort for peace, the origins of reconciliation in Arta.
Ismail Omar Gelle, the architect of peace in the Horn of Africa. Men make history. but they do not know the history they are making. This quote from Karl Marx could be the key to understanding the ARTA process, for behind the images of a conference, a dialogue, and a raised flag emerges the visions of a man, Ismail Omar Guelleh, who quietly transformed a moral gamble in a political doctrine. In 1999, the day after his election, the Horn of Africa region was in a state of permanent tension. Ethiopia and Eritrea were barely emerging from a deadly border war. Sudan was still divided, and Somalia remained fragmented in rival territories. Djibouti, by its size and position, seemed out of the picture, and yet it was from the political periphery that light would come. Ismail Omar Guelleh conceived what would become a diplomacy of moderations, a provincial wisdom elevated to the rank of continental method. Speak little, listen a lot, and act at the right time. When he decided to host the Somali conference in Arta, the world remained skeptical, but the president knew what he was doing. He understood a trust that the great chancellery had forgotten. Lasting peace is not built by injection, but by inclusion. In his vision, the Republic of Djibouti became the humble and firm mediator, capable of opening up dialogue without confiscating it. He orchestrated without dominating. He guided without imposing. His presence, discreet but constant, created a climate of trust. And it is in this climate that words replaced weapons. At the heart of the Arta debate, tensions were real. Clan rivalry, leaders, ambitions, historical mistrusts between regions and militia. The process faltered several times, but each time Djiboutian diplomacy mended the fractures with the patience of a craftsman. What was at stake in Arta goes beyond Somalia. For Djibouti, it was a demonstration of moral sovereignty, where major powers intervened by forces. A small state offered a voice, where military logic dictated peace through surrenders. Djibouti invented peace through mutual recognition. The Arta process gave a birth to a unique diplomatic school, a school of a long-term development, of respect for sensitivity, of keeping one's word. Arta's legacy is this proof that a country's size does not determine the scope of its influence. Ismail Omar Guelleh not only reconciled Somalia, he redefined the very functions of African leaders, that of responsible leadership rooted in the conviction that dialogue is a weapon of mass constructions. This textbook case is so often studied since has remained the matrix of Djiboutian foreign policy, mediation, stability, and consistency. From Khartoum to Addis Ababa, from Mogadishu to Sana'a, the Arta doctrine is still inspired, and 25 years later, it recalls the simple trust that in Africa greatness lies not in power, but in the ability to create peace.
And now in this report as well, entitled "The 6 Months That Changed the Horn of Africa," we look back at the decisive period during which Djibouti experienced a historic turning point, a 6-month chapter that reshaped the nation's trajectory.
The 6 months that changed the Horn of Africa. For months, Arta has become the center of the Somali world, and a white and pitched between the sea and the mountain. The Somali National Reconciliation Conference is making progress. The atmosphere is heavy with a mixture of history and hope. 10 years of war, exile, and fatigue are evident on their faces, but in their eyes, a flame, the flame of a return to speech. In the large hall, verbal justice rages. Elders evoke the wounds of Mogadishu. The diaspora demands a democratic future. Religious leaders call for reconciliation in the name of the Almighty, while representatives of the autonomous regions defend their hard-won autonomy. Every word becomes a battlefield. Debates are sometimes suspended. Faces become closed. Voices break. Observers fear failure. Tensions reach their peak. Some factions threaten to withdraw. Differences over the compositions of the future government block all progress. Discussions rage in the corridors. For months, The nights become long, compromises are fragile. The process seems to be faltering. Towards the end of August, a few weeks before the United Nations Summit, the head of state sees that the hourglass is running out. He must report back to the international community. So he travels, and then an unexpected event changes the situation. That day, President Ismail Omar Guelleh discreetly attends a plenary session. The debates are once again at an impasse. Words are fired, accusations are flown, resentment resurfaces. The usually reserved head of state takes the floor without a prepared speech, without notes. He speaks with his hand on his heart with some provincial wisdom, and in a sudden silence he addressed the assembly in Somali. His tone was no longer that of a president, but of a brother speaking to his family. He evoked the pain of a stateless people, the shame of arms between brothers, the fatigue of a region that has mourned the same war far too long. His tone is sincere, his words direct. In the room, glances meet. Some weep, others bow their heads. The effect is immediate. The room, divided for weeks, falls silent for the first time. This moment will become the moral turning point of the ARTA process, for after the speech, the debates resume, but in a different tone, calmer, more constructive. The delegates, moved by the sincerity of the head of state, decided to put aside their grudge and move forward with what was essential, rebuilding a transitional government together. The committee returned to work. Drafts were made, amendments were made, and signatures were signed. Consensus took shape. For the first time in a decade, representatives from all regions of Somalia agreed on a common text. The creation of a transitional parliament and the establishment of a federal government, ARTA, became the scene of rebirth. And that day, the voice of a president, spoken in the languages of the people, accomplished that what years of war had failed to do, bring Somalia back to the dialogue table.
And now, the Ministry of National Education and Vocational Training has announced the organization of its annual continuous training courses for teachers held during the school holiday week each year. These training sessions take place both in Djibouti City and across the country's regional prefectures with the objective of strengthening teachers' professional competencies at all levels of education, including primary, middle, secondary, and technical education. This initiative is part of a proactive strategy to enhance the quality of education in Djibouti, as continuous professional development is considered a cornerstone for enabling teachers to keep pace with modern pedagogical methods, deepen their subject expertise, and exchange innovative practices and experiences. The ultimate goal is to ensure high-quality education that meets the needs of students and aligned with the evolving challenges of the national education system. This year's training program was supervised by the Inspector General, Mr. Mohamed Abdo, and the Director General of Education, Mrs. Lula Ibn Ali, whose active participation underscored the Ministry's strong commitment to teachers' development. Both officials encouraged participants to apply the newly acquired skills within their classrooms to improve the learning experience. The training session covered a diverse range of topics, including modern pedagogical approaches, active learning methodology, and the integration of technology into education. Teachers took part in interactive workshops, lectures, and group discussion, fostering a collaborative learning environment that promoted the sharing of knowledge and innovative practices. The MENFOP reaffirmed its steadfast commitment to investing in teachers' capacity building, recognizing that the quality of education fundamentally depends on the competence and dedication of those who carry the mission of knowledge. These efforts form part of a broader national vision aimed at improving the education system and preparing a generation equipped to face the challenges of the future with confidence and skills. Sports now. The National Swimming Pool last night hosted the official launch of the 25-26 National Swimming Championship, a major sporting event that marks a milestone in the revival and development of Djiboutian swimming. The ceremony was inaugurated by the President of the Djiboutian Swimming Federation, Mr. Abdullah Mohamed, in the presence of 7 members of his team, athletes, and water sports enthusiasts. His opening remarks had an energetic tone for the evening's competition, which highlighted performance, fair play, and sporting excellence. Throughout the event, swimmers divided according to age and gender categories competed the thrilling qualifying rounds, each striving to give their best performance, win medals, and proudly defend their club's colors. The championship unfolded in a festive and friendly atmosphere characterized by a genuine spirit of sportsmanship and camaraderie. And now in Africa, the African Union renews its calls for permanent African representation on the UN Security Council. The reports.
The African Union Commission has reaffirmed the importance of permanent African representation on the UN Security Council. This demand, led by the African Union, aims to correct historical injustice and improve the Council's representativeness, which no longer reflect the current state of the world. Africa is requesting 2 permanent seats with a veto power, in addition to 5 non-permanent seats. Key argument for Africa's permanent representativeness: Africa is the only region without a permanent seat on the Council, despite for a UN member state more than a quarter of the total. Effectiveness and credibility: the Council's current structure, which has not been reformed since the end of the World War II, is considered absolutely undermining its legitimacy, credibility, and effectiveness in addressing current crisis. A veto power: Africa is demanding the veto power for its permanent seats to ensure equal width in global decision. International support: several countries, including permanent members of the Council, such as the United States and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, support reform along these lines. Extraterritorial imbalance: the injustice of this inclusion is highlighted as marginalizes the African continent from decisions that directly concern it.
And now in Doha, Qatar, U.S. President Donald Trump held talks with His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of State of Qatar, in Doha, following the landing of Air Force One at Al Ubaid Air Base before his departure to Malaysia to begin an Asian tour. During the meeting, which took place aboard the presidential aircraft, Trump expressed his gratitude to the state of Qatar in the presence of Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, Qatar's Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, commending Doha's role in supporting efforts to promote stability in the region. American media outlets reported that this visit came within the framework of monitoring the ceasefire agreement following the completion of its first phase and preparing for the second. They highlighted Qatar's pivotal role alongside Egypt and Turkey in ensuring the success of the accord. This is it for this 9 p.m. English News edition. Thank you for watching us. Stay tuned for more on RTD.